Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Just Saying Football with Jack and Sean. I'm your host, Sean Gannon, alongside my partner, Jack Nicholas. We're here to bring you news, notes, weekly updates, and game analysis of your favorite teams from around the league. Now, the chance, go check out our website, justsayingfootball.com. Follow us on Instagram at JustSaying, for article and video updates. And don't forget us in your ears on Spotify at Just Saying Football. Week 2 is happening. Week 1 was insane. The Ravens blew a loss. The Bears blew a loss. The Lions got decimated. It was a good week 1. How are you feeling?
Yeah, man, a lot of twists and turns there. We just, we got to see a lot of crazy games. A lot of them came down to the wire. We were talking about it off camera too. I mean, all the games we were kind of expecting to be underwhelming were some of the best games of the whole week. So, we're going into week 2 right now. A lot of good speculation. A lot of teams trying not to be 0-2. And we got a fire Thursday night football game this week.
Yeah, and kicking us right off, we have the Green Bay Packers making their way, or the Washington Commanders making their way to Green Bay to take on the Packers. Packers are favored in this one by -3.5, over under here of 47.5. What are your thoughts going into this one? Micah Parsons didn't play a ton of snaps, new guy in the building, obviously, but his presence was felt and was known, and he did get his first sack with the Packers.
Yeah, even he said it. He wished he was there all season so he could get better with that team. But he looked pretty great last week. Commanders, they had a couple of great plays against the Giants last week. Our boy Bill, he was the first guy to ever have more than 80, to have 75 and a touchdown, being a plus 200 pick. He had the 4th most rushing yards last week. I think they're going to rely on him and Eckler to try to get past it. But, man, the Packers defense looks so good right now. I'm going to take them and my boy Josh Jacobs. And I got to say, Jordan Love is looking great this season so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to also go with the Packers here. My biggest concern with the Commanders when I was watching that game was it felt like they definitely had control the entire time. They were up 14-3 at the half, but it didn't feel like they had urgency to score, urgency on offense. It seemed that to me felt like a game where they should have had way more points than 21, honestly. And part of that was maybe the Giants defense doing the right things, but I do also feel like there was a lot of not urgency. It's week 1, it's easy and blah 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 blah. And if that's the case going into Green Bay, you're going to get hit with the truck, and that's what I think is going to happen. I think this is going to be a big wake-up game for Washington. I'm locking in the Packers. Moving this into Sunday now, we got our 1 p.m. games with the Jacksonville Jaguars making their way to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Bengals favored this one by -3.5. Over-under here of 50.5. Now, the big storyline is that the Bengals only had 7 yards of offense in the second half. Now, this is a team where everybody's getting paid offensively. T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, and Jamar Chase. They got to get right, don't you think?
They have to, man. I mean, me, along with anybody else who drafted Jamar Chase or Joe Burrow this season in fantasy especially, you're looking at that it just seemed like a complete anomaly last week. You have a good matchup here. Jacksonville had a great game last week. You have, Etienne getting 143 yards on the ground. But Trevor Lawrence did not look that great last week, had less than 200 yards. So I think this has to be a big bounce back for just the whole Bengals offense. I could list them all. But I got to say, Chase Brown looked good enough last week. I think they could try to run through him a lot and try to stop Jacksonville from getting at the ground attack they got last week. But I'm still going with the Bengals this week.
Yeah, I think I like the 50.5. Honestly, I don't know if I want to go. I think I'll go under, but I like the high score here. I do think that the Bengals defense is something to worry about. The Browns offense is just a little bit of a concern, so I will say that's part of the reason. And that's a divisional game. I think that this Jags offense could get it going and keep scoring. Hopefully, the Bengals can actually keep up in this one. I'm going Cincinnati because you have to have. You have that's unacceptable. I think it was barely 120 passing yards from Joe Burrow on the day. Yes, the protection was awful. They have Myles Garrett. Of course, he's getting in the way, but that is unacceptable. There's $200 million put into this offense. There was all this talk off season about the defense. The offense wasn't there. It's get right, or I think it's going to be larger concerns about this whole organization going forward. Moving this along, we have your New York Giants making their way to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Dallas is favored in this one by -3.5 with an over-under here of 44.5. What are your feelings about this one? Your Giants obviously did not score a touchdown last week. How are you feeling as they take on the Cowboys?
Yeah, super frustrated. I think that, when you have 13 plays inside the 10, you expect your team to score a touchdown. But that didn't happen last week. The offensive line, was just letting Russell Wilson get attacked. I think he's also just a little bit part of the problem. But definitely the play calling. Malik Neighbors, he was complaining on the sideline, but he had 12 targets last week, only 5 catches. We got to have everybody get involved. The Dallas Cowboys were able to go punch for punch pretty much with the Eagles last week, and we weren't expecting all of that. I think they're going to rely heavily on Javonte Williams this week, and they're going to get the win at home. I hate to say it for all my Giants peeps out there, but yeah, the Cowboys looked good. Javonte Williams was also running back 2 last week in fantasy, so they're going to be expecting a lot of production out of him.
Yeah, I think that I think it's the Cowboys' game to win, honestly, just because of the way that they were playing last week. I think that Sean Howard put together a very good game plan up against the Eagles, and if they're able to kind of do that week in and week out and put these game plans together, there's no reason why they can't lose. So I'm going to go with them. I will also say for the Giants, I know that they want to call in Jackson Dart. I totally understand. It. I think just slow down on that. It's only week 1. I completely understand it from the Giants' perspective, especially the fans. But I just think it's so important. Let young quarterbacks develop. It's really crucial. Not every quarterback needs to be thrown in to the fire just because of a poor performance by another quarterback. You signed Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson for a reason. I don't think it's time to just rush Dart in there. Take your time with him. It's okay if he doesn't see it for a few more weeks. Let him develop. Let him understand the game. Don't rush him because otherwise it's a whole future problem that you might be dealing with. And we saw what happened last night with McCarthy. That 1 year of rest, granted, was an injury, but it's important for quarterbacks. It helps them out and understand the game a little bit better.
And
so,
I agree, man.
Moving this right along.
It is, oh, sorry. I just want to say, too, that the fact is that is, like we said last week, week 5, I'm hearing a lot of people say that they got to start him next week. I am a big believer in the waiting as a Giants fan.
Yeah. Always wait, let him sit. We saw it again. Mahomes is like the premier example of what it means to sit a quarterback. Obviously, not everybody's Mahomes, but that's what happens when you sit a quarterback. Moving this along, we have an NFC North showdown for the 3rd straight time in these last 2 weeks. Chicago Bears making their way to Detroit to take on the Lions. Lions favored by -5.5. Over under here of 47.5. Now, both of these teams had their share of disappointment. Lions obviously just got demolished by the Packers. Couldn't get anything going offensively. And the Bears had the fumble of the win, man, of the comeback victory.
Yeah. We'll get a little bit into how they lost that game on Monday, when we're going in our Vikings segment later, too. And I just got to point out here that Jahmyr Gibbs, he had 10 catches, so they're obviously trying to get him involved, but he only had 31 yards. Yes, the Packers were all over him, but we did see the Bears front line do a good job against the Vikings last night, at least in the first half. But Detroit, they do not want to fall 0-2. They're very big NFC favorites this year. The Bears looked better than expected, especially in the first half last night. So both of these teams are just trying to avoid this 0-2 slide, especially in this division where you have the Packers and Vikings who are a little bit better. I want to see Detroit get all their weapons involved. I was just kind of asking myself, where was Amon-Ra last week? Why can't they just get these things going? Totally different offense, and the guys on the other sideline. So I will take the Lions at home. They're favored by 5.5, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Bears keep this one a little bit closer.
I do think it's going to be a close game. I am also going Lions. I think you lose these 2 coordinators. It was the talk of the town nonstop all season. Obviously, all eyes now on Dan Campbell. What's going to happen? Were you the product of your coordinators? Was this team just a product of the coordinators? Or is it the players and everything? Yeah. So I do think that there's a response to this. I will also say, losing Frank Ragnow to retirement was a huge loss for this team. That is an all-pro caliber center. And having your center, that's a guy that's going to see the defense, help out quarterbacks, call the offensive line, help them out. So you're losing a huge crucial thing, and they lost both their guards. So there's big changes on this offensive line. We've seen in years past, especially with how good these defensive lines are getting. You lose some offensive guys, that drastically changes. Yeah. When Trent Williams goes out for the 49ers, that changes the scope of that offense. When Christian Darrisaw went out for the Vikings, that changed that offense. So we see this, and that's something that everybody just needs to keep in mind with Detroit. They lost somebody huge this offseason. There's going to be some growing pains with that. Moving this along, we have the LA Rams making their way to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Rams are favored by minus 5.5. Over under here, 41.5. I'm locking in the Rams. I've been huge on them all off season. Still big on them right now, despite the slow start last week. I think they're going to start to kick it into gear again. Week 1 is a weird time for everybody, I think. So take everything with a grain of salt. Week 3 to 5, that's when you start to kind of know where your team is at. And on the flip for me, I'll be honest, man, Tennessee I think just has a lot to grow with this offense. None to do with Cam Ward. He was making some incredible throws. His wide receivers, I don't know what was going on. I don't know if they're putting butters on their hands or they just didn't want to play football with him. It just seemed like each time he was making an insane throw to an open wide receiver, whether it was Calvin Ridley or somebody else, just didn't matter. It was brick for hands.
Yeah, big drops. Yeah, and he only had 112 yards last week, so that reflects that. I'm going with the Rams as well. Puka got banged up, but he had 10 for 130 last week. I think that it's going to just be a huge, like you said, big mesh of this offense. And I know you talked about last week the emphasis on the Rams defense, which came in big last week against Houston. I think they're a big factor again here at Tennessee. So this is going to be probably one of the simple picks of the weekend.
Yep, I'm moving this right along. We have an NFC East showdown. New England Patriots making their way to Dolphins to Miami take on the Dolphins. Dolphins favored this by minus 1.5. Over under here at 44.5. Honestly, this is the game to stay away from for all bets right now. These two teams, I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna go with the Patriots right now. I'm staying far away from this game. Tyreek Hill has some off-field stuff going on currently. Their offense looked horrible. Their defense looked not good. The Patriots might be without Christian Gonzalez. Stay away from this game betting wise.
Yeah, I would completely stay away. Very good advice. I mean, you got last week they were just horrible, like you said. Tua no better than anybody else on the field last week with his turnovers. You got Devon Achane only getting 4 targets, which seems like when Tua starts and you have Achane, he has about 11 a game, so that's pretty shocking to see. They just got whooped by Indianapolis last week. Maybe a product of this new Peyton Manning level Danny Dimes, but I doubt it. I genuinely think the Patriots come in here as dogs and win this one. They did allow a lot of passing yards last week, so if the Miami Dolphins are going to get back on track, this is a great matchup. But like Sean said, this is not going to be a game that's going to be super entertaining this weekend. It's not going to be like the Jets-Steelers where we said that last week and it turns into an absolute shootout. This is probably going to be the game to stay away of, as Sean said. Couldn't have said it better, Sean.
Yeah, and honestly, speaking of games to stay away from betting-wise, there's a chance that this is another one depending on how the injury report comes out. We have the San Francisco 49ers making their way to New Orleans to take on the Saints. The 49ers right now, this is Tuesday of recording, are favored by minus 7.5, over under here of 43.5. Now, the reason why I'm saying the injury report is crucial, George Kittle is on the IR for at least 4 games with a hamstring injury. Now, Juwan Jennings is probable to play, but he is dealing with a shoulder injury, and Brock Purdy remains uncertain with the toe and shoulder injury, which means that Mac Jones will get the start. Now, they do have Christian McCaffrey, but he popped up last week on the injury report last week, and then was miraculously off it. So there's a lot to worry about this. I am going 49ers, but not very confident, and I do think that a lot of these bets are going to change, and the line is going to change, especially as this injury report comes out. If Mac Jones comes out, I think he can still lead this team. I don't know if he'll be the same as Brock Purdy. I think they can get the win, especially with CMC, but I might be a game that you stay away from betting, depending on who's in and who's out.
Yeah, this is going to have to be, for me, the edge is going to have to be the San Francisco defense. We saw them kind of come up in the clutch last week against Seattle. They're going to need it. They're going to need to make sure that they are on the same page that they were last week. New Orleans is a good matchup for them. I think that if we have Mac Jones in there, like you said, the line will be closer. But I do still believe that San Francisco could get it. But always love to hate on we always love hating on the San Francisco beat writers. They're always putting up stuff like that. Hey, McCaffrey's got a calf. Well, he had 30 touches on Sunday. So who do you want to believe? But we're both going San Francisco. Easy one in this. Not too much love on the Saints side until we know what that team is going to start looking like.
Absolutely. All right, let's move this into one of the most intriguing games of the week by far. That's the Buffalo Bills making their way to New York to take on the Jets. Buffalo's favored by this one by -7.5. Over under here of 45.5. And I say intriguing because the Jets were incredible last week offensively.
They looked so good, dude.
How
did that happen?
Really weird. It was really weird. Not when it mattered, but they looked really good.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if Garrett Wilson catches that ball for a first down, we're talking a lot different. But, Jalen Ramsey is Jalen Ramsey. Buffalo, though, man, one of the greatest comebacks you'll ever see. Sunday Night Football at home. What a way to kick off this final stadium season out there. Jets, last week, when you're looking at Justin Fields, man, I mean, we were kind of wondering if it was going to take some time, but he was QB2 last week in fantasy scoring. So whatever these team looks like throughout the year, I think we can count on him. I'm a big, hater on Justin Fields, but I think he's finally found a system that, he can work, and he definitely looked a lot more pro-ready last week. The Bills have had the Jets' number in recent years. Keon Coleman, 11 targets last week, and he got 9 catches, over 100 yards. Who's Josh Allen's number 1 receiver, along with Shakir now. And then Dalton Kincaid getting a touchdown last week, that showed me a lot. I think that, when you look at the Buffalo box score from the other day, you just think to yourself, man, they've figured out all the receiving questions that we had this season. But I will go with Buffalo in this one.
I have to go Buffalo as well. I think that the Jets are going to put up another fight, and I think that there's a very real possibility that they pull out a surprise win, especially because
Jets
they're at
live
home.
Bet, Chauncey? Maybe.
Probably.
Keep an eye out.
Jets live bets. Keep an eye on that. But I just think, looking at Buffalo the way that they played last week, the team just has so much heart. Josh Allen is once again playing at an MVP level, and that was an incredible quarterback matchup that we had for Sunday Night Football. And when they needed it most, Josh Allen showed up. Keon Coleman showed up. These guys showed up, and there was clearly no lack of faith in them. I gotta lock in Buffalo right now. I think that they're the AFC heavy favorites, especially with everything going on with Kansas City at the moment. Mm-hmm. They know this, and now they got a target on their back, which means that every week is going to be a dogfight. And I think that they just showed last week, hey, we're gonna show up, because they had a target on their back last week, and they were there. Moving this right along, we have the Seattle Seahawks making their way to Pittsburgh, taking on the Steelers. Steelers favored this one by -2.5, over under here of 40.5. Now, Seattle's running back by committee, my friend.
They are.
And
all the Charbonnet people, you've waited your time. Here it is.
It's now. It is now. And I will say Sam Darnold didn't have the greatest showing in his first game as a Seahawk. But I will also say, and it was my biggest concern with that team, that offensive line is just not that good.
Yeah. And they always have struggled with that. Honestly, outside of the Giants, I haven't seen a team that just has been trying and, not being able to get it. The big thing here, you have the DK Metcalf revenge game. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers throwing 4 touchdowns last week. They're at home. Seattle's traveling all the way across the country. I do like the Steelers in this one. I never like trusting the 2.5. The issue is I don't have enough confidence in Seattle's rest of their receiving core outside of JSN. He had 9 for 124 last week, but they're going to need a lot more than that to cover the Steelers here. So I think the Steelers, I could see another Boswell kick in a close game just like last week. So I think that's the outcome again this week.
See, I'll actually take the spread for the Steelers on this one. I know the -2.5. I think that you got Alex Highsmith, you got Cam Hayward, and you have J.J. Watt. You get in the face of Sam Darnold time and time again. They're on the road. DK Metcalf's against his former team. He's going to want the ball. To me, it's just they don't have the support of having the 12. They're against the division opponent that they were in 49ers last week. I think it's the Steelers. And I'll even take the money line. I think that this is one of those games where it's just I don't like what we saw from the Seahawks offensive line. I don't like your point. That entire offense was just JSN. If one good cornerback and safety coverage to slow that down might fully stop that offense, and I'm worried about that at the moment. And if that constant pressure is getting on Sam Darnold,
and the Steelers got Jalen Ramsey, they got a good corner. Yeah. They can stop this offense. We saw what
Jalen Ramsey did last week. And again, Sam Darnold was great for the Vikings. He had a great season. When there was pressure on him, despite having JJ, despite having Addison, Hawkinson, he couldn't overcome it, and that's not necessarily his fault. It's hard to overcome pressure, so that's what I'm worried about. Moving this into our 4 o'clock games, we have the Denver Broncos making their way to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Denver's favored this one by -2.5. Over under here 42.5. Now, Bo Nix, we're still big on him, but that was a tough first game of the season, that is for sure. And on the flip, Indiana Jones, man, Daniel Jones is what the fuck?
He actually is Indiana Jones now. He's absolutely nuts. I mean, this is 5 total touchdowns last week for him. We are looking at, the Broncos. I mean, we just 3 turnovers last week. This is going to be tough. This could be an Indianapolis live bet just because Jonathan Taylor looks like he's running really well. I don't know, man. I'm going to take Denver in this one because we need the Bo Leavers to have some faith in Bo Nix, but, man, did I not see, Peyton Manning level Daniel Jones coming.
No, I did not either, and I'll say this. Those 2 rushing touchdowns that he had, fucking bullshit, man. I have Jonathan Taylor in 2 fantasy leagues. I'm getting vultured by Daniel Jones. I hate this right now. This is some bullshit, all right? I was really upset watching those games because Jonathan Taylor had a great game, offensively, but not for fantasy. I needed him in the end zone. I'm going with Denver in this one. I think that this defense is just so freaking good for Denver, and I think that there's a huge comeback for this offense. They have a lot of playmakers. They have a lot of weapons. Maybe Tennessee has one of those stingy defenses that we're sleeping on right now. I mean, they do have L'Jarius Sneed. We saw him playing pretty well last week. So maybe that was just something that sort of got to them. Again, it's also week 1, but I'm liking Denver in this one. They're on the road. Look, Kansas City has a chance to potentially be 0-2. We'll get to that in a second. Denver jumps to 2-0. Raiders and Chargers, we'll get to that later on. This is huge right now for these teams. They're aware of that. It's not just winning your opponent. You got to win your division as well. So Denver's thinking about that. Everybody's thinking about that. Moving this along, Carolina Panthers making their way to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Cardinals favoring this by -6.5. Over under here of 42.5. I'm locking in the Cardinals without question. Carolina has a lot of question marks. I'm not giving up on Bryce Young. I think this just the offensive weapons just don't seem to care. Xavier Legette missed a block or dropped a ball, then he chose not to block. I don't know what's going on. They got to figure that out. I'm not going to put it all on Bryce Young just yet. But also, I do just want to say one thing about the Cardinals. That deep ball throw to Marvin Harrison Jr. That was beautiful. Oh my God, bro! I was watching that, and then I was like, "No way is he going to catch that? That's a really hard catch." And my man was like, boop. That was beautiful. I love that throw. If that's what they can do all season, this is going to be a lot of fun, especially with Trey McBride.
Dude, I know. And Trey McBride last week, obviously we want him getting involved. I think this is an easy cover for me. Arizona played it close to the chest last week. They're definitely going to have to take advantage of having 2 NFC South matchups back to back. I love, what I saw out of Kyler Murray last week. I told everybody on the show, I said James Conner, Kyler Murray rushing yards, both easy right there. Obviously didn't put Kyler Murray rushing yards in the Discord, but I should have. But I will say this is going to probably be the quick one today. I think the Arizona Cardinals is a better team. We saw, Jacksonville we thought would be a favorable matchup last week for Carolina, and Carolina looked horrible.
Yeah.
So also, I'm not taking Carolina this week.
Yeah. I do also want to say I'll be taking McBride touchdown pretty much every week on the bets. I feel like you just have to for the sake of him. And one thing about Arizona, they figured out how to utilize Trey Benson and James Conner in this offense, and 2 running backs seems to be becoming the norm in the NFL, right? We saw it even with the Giants, Bo Scatterbo and Tyron Tracy Jr. That is the norm now. You got to have 2, and them figuring out Trey Benson might add a whole nother level for Jonathan Gannon in this offense, which you really like. All right. 425 Super Bowl rematch. Philadelphia Eagles make their way to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Eagles are favored in this one, but only by -1.5. Over under here of 46.5. Now somehow the Eagles just traded for Tank Bigsby right before this game. That was shocking to me. What are your thoughts going into this one?
Yeah, I don't know how they just keep getting players for free. I mean, no, I don't know how they're going to play in Kansas City. The fact is in Kansas City, it's a tough place to play. But we saw the Eagles, have a great game with the Cowboys last week. Both of these guys were playing in the early games. Now they get a nice little 425. Xavier Worthy out, Rashee Rice still out. Definitely, going to see a lot of Hollywood Brown. Obviously, 16 targets last week. I do like the Eagles in this one, but I will go with the Chiefs. I feel like this is a good home game. They don't want to be 0-2. Philly 1-1. This will make things a lot more interesting for me. Kelsey had 4 targets last week. I'm sure the game plan, even though he took out his wide receiver, is going to be getting him more. We got to see more from the running game. Isaiah Pacheco, I don't think he's had more than 5 fantasy points in his last 10 starts. So I would love to either see him get traded or get in there, but they still got Kareem Hunt. The Eagles should win this game, but I could see KC pulling out a close one.
It wouldn't surprise me if Mahomes able to pull off some Mahomes magic and there's something crazy going on that we don't know about in their wide receiver room because they haven't made any moves. But I got to go with Philly in this one. I just think that defense is so good. And honestly, they didn't pass a lot and they didn't really have to. And whether or not, look, you want A.J. Brown to get more touches, sure, for a lot of reasons. But ultimately, Jalen Hurts didn't make the mistakes that what happened that costed him the game. He ran the ball in at the appropriate times. It sucks for fantasy owners, but the biggest thing is that they win games, and that's all that they're concerned about for Philly. So if they're winning games and it's Jalen Hurts scoring 2 rushing touchdowns and they're QB sneaking in, tush pushing it, well, they're going to QB sneak and tush push it and have Jalen Hurts score 2 rushing touchdowns every single game because that's what I
don't know
wins.
how A.J. Brown is tolerating this. Well, winning a Super Bowl ain't hurting, but damn, they won for 7 last week. He's got to be mad.
I will say I think you can take over 1 reception on him. I think that it's a big passing game for them. We saw what they did in the Super Bowl. Saquon Barkley was a huge asset. This will open up the play action for them. I just right now with Kansas City, the Rashee Rice, and then you get now the Xavier Worthy injury. I'm worried about that. I don't know if they have it. I will also say, though, Adoree Jackson for the Eagles, that's a liability at the moment. They brought in Mike Hilton. They brought him a tryout. At the moment, they haven't signed him. Something just be monitoring. All right. Sunday Night Football. Atlanta Falcons making their way to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Vikings are favored by -4.5, over under of 45.5. I think we can all agree that Michael Penix is definitely the future of Atlanta. I thought he was fantastic against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, doing everything that he had to. It sucks that you miss on the field goal, and Koo felt way worse than anybody else on that field. I do not doubt that, man. What are your thoughts going into this one? Because these are 2 second-year quarterbacks going up against one another.
Yeah, definitely. And, you mentioned earlier in the show about how McCarthy was waiting. Michael Penix, he was waiting a little bit less last year. Got to see. He definitely looks like he made a nice little jump from last season, but it is just 1 game. Bijan last week, definitely want to see him get going on the ground, 12 for 24, but he had 100 yards through the air, 7 targets, 6 catches. We love that. I do want to go with I wanted to go with the Falcons, but I am going to go with the Vikings because I was going to make my pick last night around the 3rd quarter, but how did that go last night, Chauncey? Pretty good.
I'll be honest. So I of course, I'm a defeatist Vikings fan, as most of our franchise is, and I was texting many people, especially and my friend Ben Gordon, shout out him, friend of the show. One of the big things I kept saying as we were watching this game was a lot of Bears fans are we're the same Bears, we never win these games. The Vikings don't win these comeback games in the division. No. As much as the Bears are we don't win these games, neither do we. It was and so I don't. I said last week it's week 1. I'm not gonna take everything unless he throws 5 interceptions. He had an insane game. Ultimately, 3 touchdowns in the 4th quarter. That comeback win on the road
against a division opponent. In a debut, not bad.
I want to hold my horses because it's still week 1. There's a lot can happen. There was a lot of mistakes in that game. Very slow start. You play a different team. Maybe the outcome's different. That the Vikings defense is legit. Yeah. That's what was shown that kept us in there. I think that the fan base is just going to be so you guys don't understand how insane the Vikings fan base has been today, how crazy it is and electric it is, and I'm really trying to reel it all in to stay down to earth, not by any excitement, but. You saw it on First Take. You saw it on ESPN. Everybody likes McCarthy. Lot more time left A lot of season left to be
A
played.
lot
Let's
of
see what
time for
happens.
Chauncey to go on Vikings rants this season.
Yep.
Don't think just because they had a miracle comeback, it's not coming.
But I like it. I like
Yeah.
it. I like where we're going, man. I'm excited. I gotta just say that. So I'm locking in the
But
Vikings.
there's one thing I got to ask you if you like or not. Is it a double Monday night football next week?
Oh my god. So normally, I think we could all agree that more football is better.
Yes.
But this is where it gets weird. It's a 7 p.m. and a 10 p.m. Monday night football game, everybody. Eastern time, all right? So
Enjoy that second game, West Coast.
Which, let's say it's a 3.5 hour game, that's going to put you at 1:30 in the morning Eastern time on a Monday night football game. All right. First is the 7 o'clock game. We got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers making their way to Houston to take on the Texans. Houston favored this one -1.5, over under here of 42.5. Now, that Texans defense is legit. Now, how are you feeling, though? Because the Bucs had a slow start, but our guy, Emeka Egbuka, man, game-winning
Yes.
touchdown.
Go back and check the draft videos. That dude
Check
is
the draft
everything I
videos.
said that he is. This guy, man, he looks crisp. He's
Called
great.
his
Mike
own
Evans-
number in the
Mike
huddle.
Evans saying that in the huddle he needed to go for it. Absolute walk-off last week. That's huge because, Atlanta missed the field goal. We wanted more football. Like you said, more football is good football. But I'm taking the Bucs on the road as dogs for sure this week. They really did impress me last week at the fact that they struggled in the first half and really were able to answer. But the Texans, I think that they're going to have a big problem with Vita Vea this week as well. The Bucs, front seven. Both of these teams' defenses are good. That's why the 42 is there. I would just watch that line, but I will take Tampa as dogs this week for sure in prime time. What about you?
I think this is going to be a really close game. There's a reason why it's a -1.5. And like you just said, both of these defense has dogs on them. And I think
Yes.
that's going to be like what keeps this game potentially close and hits the under on this 42.5, quite honestly. But on the flip, I think you're right. But Vita Vea is the biggest
He's the X factor for me.
And the offensive line for the Texans, I think, took a step back, and we saw it a little bit last week. Hassan Reddick was all over the place. Yaya Diaby was all over the place. Lante David was all over the place. Clyde Cansey, that guy who we loved out of Pitt a few years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
And that, to me, is going to be the game changer. I think if you have to lean on an offense or a defense that's a little bit better right now, it's the Bucs. So I have to go with them. I 0-2 hole for the Texans. Not what you were expecting in the AFC South, but I think it's a very real possibility right now. Let's see what happens. Maybe there's something changes. Nico Collins is elite. You know what I mean? So there's always a chance.
Well, he
there.
didn't get the touchdown last week, but I'll definitely sprinkle a little bit on a Mike Evans, Nico Collins combo tutty this week.
I
Not
like
bad.
that in this one. I like that in this one. I will happily ride that. All right. Honestly, our last game of the week, the 10 o'clock Monday night football game. And it's honestly a pretty good one right now because both these teams are 1-0. It's the LA Chargers making their way to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. Chargers favored in this one by -3.5, over under here of 45.5. Now, obviously, Chargers are coming off that insane win over the Chiefs in Brazil. Raiders are coming off of a huge win up against the Patriots. Geno Smith, 330-plus yards, only one touchdown, but that's kind of typical of Geno, it seems like, if you go back to the Seattle days. Like, dude will just throw 400 on you, but might only have, like, one touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to see a little bit more out of Ashton Genty last week. Nothing too huge. I'll let you get into him as well. But, we got to see the 2 and 3 when it comes to passing yards total last week, just behind Josh Allen. You got Geno Smith throwing 362 last week, Justin Herbert throwing 318 and 3 tutties and a win. I think that the Chargers can take this one, but the Raiders, I don't know. You were talking about it before. It could be a sneaky play. I think that it will be good at one point this season where it's like the Raiders are hot. I just think the Chargers right now, if they can go 2-0 and the Broncos somehow maybe lose out of the game, we could be talking about the Chargers in a completely different light. I would like to see that because I know they've been building that, even though Quentin Johnson has been out there. But, I do like the Chargers this week. I don't know if I love the 3.5, but I there's something about the Chargers I saw the other day that I haven't seen in the past couple seasons.
Yeah, I think what it was is Justin Herbert just looked like him all of a sudden. Like everything that we were talking
Dave
about.
Madison
with
beer.
Oregon. Yeah. Did you see that photo of him and Joe Alden Hasselbeer walking out? It's like Joe Alden's left tackle working security
Yeah,
for
you know,
him on
it's
his
a $200
team.
million quarterback. You got
Yeah,
to bring the left tackle with you.
All right, and you've got Rashawn Slater out. You got to bring in Joe Alden. It's not a bad tackle, especially left tackle. He's locking up Chris Jones last week. And there's a very real chance that he can do the same up against Max Crosby. I'm going to go with the Raiders in this one. I just think that the Raiders have not had sort of like this excitement going on. I think Ashton Jenney, only 10 carries. I think it was something like that. Very low percentage. Only averaged 3.9 yards a carry. I think it's only a matter of time before it really starts to get going. There is a change between college football to the NFL. Sometimes it just takes a week or two for these guys. I'm not worried about him. Not worried about this offense. I do want to see Jacoby Myers get a little bit more involved. And Brock Bowers is the big question mark in this one about whether or not he's going to be in with the knee injury. Something to just keep in mind and monitor because he is him. That guy clearly runs this offense. But I'm going to go with the Raiders. I just think that Vegas is going to be pretty fun. I think that those Raiders fans are going to be like, let's go. 2-0 and potentially for the Chiefs to be 0-2. I think if these Chiefs also do jump to 0-2, both these teams are...
They're going to make a move or two or something. They got to...
This will be a good game. Also, before we end it, Quinn Johnston. What do you think about him?
Dude, I mean, definitely maybe his catches. It looks like he's the new favorite guy out there. And we have Lad McConkey and Keenan Allen on there. Got to give a big shout out to him. 2 touchdowns last week. Did anyone see that coming? No, but Jim Harbaugh's definitely now got Justin Herbert in a situation where he's got a good running back and 3 good receivers. That's going to be dangerous, dude.
And last question, more running yards. Omarion Hampton or Ashton Jenney?
I honestly think at home, I feel like Jency's going to have a big game. I think like what you said.
Right?
I think that
It
he
feels
could
like
have
that
that
game.
leap this week.
I can't wait to see a Raider black.
Put him in the Discord. Came up a yard short. You're off the list, buddy.
We don't like it. We're riding RJ Harvey now.
Had a 50-yard run last week. It is over.
He was electric. Him and J.K. Dobbins actually could be a solid 1-2 combo. But all right, that is all the time that we have. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Get those fantasy lineups, tuned in and ready. A few injuries out there to monitor, especially in the tight end group if you're a George Kittle owner or if you're like me and you got a Jawan Jennings.
Yeah, get those Thursday players into your flexes so that you have your flexibility for the rest of the week.
Get them out of your flexes, not into your flexes. Out of your flexes.
Out of your flexes so that you can get everybody in there. And appreciate you guys always checking us out. Just Saying Football. Check us out on Discord, Just Saying Football, for all of our picks. Just Saying Football on YouTube and Spotify, and Just Saying with no GWJS on Instagram to get all of our updates. Thank you guys for checking us out. Week 2, here we come.
Enjoy.